It was a calm, sunny afternoon. People were walking along a quiet street, enjoying the day. Steven Seagal, dressed casually in a simple t-shirt and jeans, was strolling slowly, sipping his coffee. To anyone else, he looked like any ordinary man out for a peaceful walk. But a group of bikers was nearby, loud, confident, and showing off. Engines revving, leather jackets, sunglasses reflecting the sunlight. They had that unmistakable swagger, the kind that made everyone else step aside. And then they saw him. One of the bikers pointed at Steven and laughed. "Hey, old man, think you can walk past us without saying hello?" The others chuckled, nudging each other. They thought it would be fun to intimidate him, to show who was in charge of the street. They had no idea who they were messing with. Steven didn't flinch. He continued walking, calm and composed, almost like he was in a world of his own. His eyes scanned the street, observing, analyzing. There was a quiet confidence in his movements that made it hard to look away. One biker stepped forward, swaggering, trying to block Steven's path. "You lost or something? You look like you're in the wrong neighborhood," he said with a smirk. Steven stopped for a moment, looking at him with calm, steady eyes. "I'm exactly where I need to be," he said softly. The words were simple, but the calmness in his voice carried a weight that seemed to hang in the air. The bikers laughed, thinking it was a joke, and began circling him. Other people on the street noticed the growing tension and started slowing down to watch. Phones appeared. Instinctively, everyone wanted to record this unexpected standoff. The atmosphere was charged. A sense of anticipation hung over the street. Everyone felt it. Something was about to happen, though no one knew exactly what. The bikers were confident, sure they were in control. Steven, on the other hand, stood completely relaxed, his calm presence creating a subtle tension that no one could ignore. And then, just when the bikers were about to make their next move, the air seemed to shift. There was a quiet warning in the way Steven stood, a sense of skill and experience that none of them had expected. What happened next would shock everyone on that street, and the world watching online. The bikers were still circling Steven Seagal, revving their engines and shouting, trying to assert dominance. They had no idea that the calm man they were confronting was a martial arts legend, someone whose reputation extended across the globe. To them, he looked like an ordinary pedestrian, a target to show off in front of their friends. One biker leaned closer, his voice dripping with mockery. "You really think you can just walk through here without any trouble? This is our street." Steven didn't flinch. His expression remained neutral, his body relaxed but alert. He didn't raise his voice, didn't make sudden movements. He simply observed. Every twitch, every posture of the bikers, he noticed. Every subtle signal told him how far they were willing to go. Another biker stepped forward, swinging his arm in a playful but threatening gesture, trying to intimidate him. "Hey, buddy, don't just stand there. Say something." Steven took a slow breath and replied calmly, "I'm not here to fight. I'm just passing through." His calmness, strangely enough, only fueled their aggression. They couldn't understand why he wasn't intimidated. In their minds, someone this ordinary-looking should have been nervous, apologetic, or scared. But Steven's calm confidence was like a mirror reflecting their own insecurity. People on the street began slowing down. Phones were raised, capturing every moment. Some whispered to each other, wondering who this man was and why the bikers were acting so aggressively. The tension in the air was palpable. Everyone could feel it, even from a distance. One biker, frustrated by the lack of reaction, started circling closer, trying to trap Steven. "You think you can just ignore us?" he shouted. At that moment, Steven's eyes met his. Not with anger, not with threat, but with quiet authority. It was the kind of presence that made people second-guess themselves. The biker hesitated for a fraction of a second, just enough to make everyone around lean in, sensing that this was no ordinary man. "Quick, before the action heats up, which country or city are you watching this from? Type it in the comments now." The bikers, still unaware of who he truly was, continued their posturing. They tried to provoke him with gestures, revving engines louder, getting closer, circling tighter. But Steven remained calm. His stance was relaxed, yet every movement was purposeful. He didn't strike, he didn't shout. And that was what made him even more intimidating to IT, was almost as if he had slowed time. Every second stretched longer than it should, and the bikers' confidence began to waver. They had expected fear, but instead, they found quiet certainty, a presence they couldn't break with their loud engines or mockery. A few bystanders whispered, "Something's off about him. There's a presence about this guy." The tension kept rising. Each biker tried to assert dominance, but the calm aura surrounding Steven started to mentally trap them. They were confused, unsure how to proceed. Every aggressive move was met with unwavering composure, and the crowd could feel it. This was no ordinary street confrontation. As the bikers closed in again, the camera phones captured every angle, every hesitant glance. It was clear, whatever was about to happen next would leave a lasting impression. And in that moment, the crowd and viewers at home could sense the impending clash, a showdown that was not only physical, but also mental. The calm before the storm had set the stage, and everyone watching knew this was far from over. The bikers' frustration grew. They had been circling Steven Seagal for minutes now, laughing and shouting, but he remained completely calm. Their confident posturing, their loud engines, even their aggressive gestures, none of it seemed to affect him. To them, it was supposed to provoke fear. Instead, it created a strange unease. One biker revved his engine closer than before, sending a sharp, mechanical roar echoing down the quiet street. He leaned forward on his bike, pointing directly at Steven. "You've got guts, old man, walking past us like that. But don't think you can just ignore us." Steven's calm gaze never wavered. His voice, quiet yet firm, cut through the noise. "I don't want any trouble. I'm just passing through." The bikers laughed at his words, thinking they were clever, but there was a subtle shift in the atmosphere. Their bravado began to falter ever so slightly. People on the street noticed it too. That quiet, commanding presence that refused to react violently was already starting to make them nervous. Another biker, more aggressive than the first, stepped off his bike and moved directly in front of Steven, blocking his path. He smirked. "You think just standing there is enough? You gotta show respect." The crowd around had grown larger now, some whispering, some filming with their phones. You could feel the tension building. Everyone was waiting for the inevitable, the moment when calm would meet aggression. Steven didn't flinch. He didn't even step back. His posture was relaxed, but his presence filled the street like a magnetic force. The biker, expecting fear, found only serenity staring back at him. For the first time, he hesitated. "Why aren't you scared?" The biker spat, more confused than angry. "Because fear is not the answer," Steven replied evenly. His words carried a quiet authority, one that made even the biker doubt himself. The street seemed to pause around them. Even the engines sounded less threatening in the face of that calm. The bikers looked at each other. A nervous glance here, a slight pause there. Their confidence wavered, and the mental trap Steven had laid without moving a muscle became clear. They were aggressive, loud, intimidating, and yet they were beginning to question themselves. If you were standing there, would you stay calm like Steven or react like the bikers? Type your answer in the comments. Suddenly, one biker made a bold move, stepping closer, waving his arms, tried to provoke Steven physically. But before anything could escalate, Steven shifted slightly, not violently, not aggressively, just enough to make the biker stumble slightly off balance. It was subtle, almost imperceptible, but the effect was immediate. The biker froze. He realized that this was not an ordinary man he was trying to intimidate. The crowd gasped, some whispering, "Did you see that?" He didn't even move, and the biker stumbled. Others pointed their phones, capturing every subtle motion. The tension was now almost unbearable. Everyone watching, on the street and online, could feel the mental chess match playing out. The remaining bikers grew nervous. Their confidence was starting to crack. They had expected a fight, a reaction, a challenge to their authority. What they got instead was calm, calculated, and unshakable control. The mental pressure was heavier than any physical threat could be. Steven's eyes scanned the street once more, analyzing the biker's movements. He didn't raise his voice, didn't shout commands, and didn't threaten. Yet his presence alone was enough to mentally trap them. They were no longer in control. The street, which had been theirs just moments ago, now felt unpredictable, even intimidating, and the calmest man there had done it without a single aggressive move. As one biker stepped back, uncertain, the crowd leaned in. Everyone could sense that the moment of reckoning was approaching. The tension had reached a breaking point, and what happened next would decide everything. The calm before the storm had turned into a silent, invisible pressure that left the bikers questioning themselves. And in the hearts of everyone watching, one question remained. How does an ordinary-looking man command such fear without ever raising his hand? The stage was set. The world was watching. And soon, Steven Seagal's legendary skills, calm, controlled, and unmatched, would become unmistakably clear. The tension on the street was palpable. The bikers had been circling Steven Seagal for several minutes now, their confidence wavering with every calm glance he cast in their direction. They had expected fear, trembling, or even a verbal retort, but none of it came. Instead, they were met with serenity, a quiet confidence that left them uneasy. As one of the bikers made another aggressive gesture, the crowd whispered among themselves. "Do you know who that is?" One bystander murmured to a friend. "I think that's Steven Seagal." The words traveled like lightning through the street. At first, the bikers didn't react. They thought it was just idle speculation. But as more people in the crowd began whispering the same thing, uncertainty crept into their faces. "Steven Seagal?" one biker repeated, almost laughing nervously. "No way." But the whispers grew louder. Phones were raised, cameras focusing on every subtle movement. People leaned closer, trying to confirm the man's identity. "That's him, the martial arts legend," someone shouted quietly, unable to contain their excitement. For the bikers, the moment was disorienting. Their aggression had been met with calm control, and now there was the possibility that they were facing a living legend, someone whose skill and reputation were known worldwide. Their swagger began to falter, replaced by doubt. Steven didn't say a word about who he was. He didn't need to. His mere presence carried a weight that spoke louder than any introduction. The way he stood, the way he moved, even the way he breathed, everything projected control, experience, and a subtle warning. The bikers could feel it, even if they didn't understand it yet. One biker stepped forward, tried to regain composure. "I don't care who you are," he said, voice trembling slightly. "You're just a man." Steven's calm eyes met his. "And you are just reacting without thinking," he replied evenly. The words weren't harsh, but they carried authority, piercing through the bravado that had kept the bikers confident moments before. The crowd began to murmur louder now. Some were recording, some gasping, some simply frozen, captivated by the quiet standoff. The bikers looked around nervously, noticing the growing attention and realizing that the street was no longer just theirs. The onlookers were watching, judging, and documenting every movement. The shift was subtle but undeniable. The bikers were no longer in control. Their previous confidence had been replaced with uncertainty, fear even, as whispers of Steven Seagal's legendary reputation spread. They glanced at one another, seeking reassurance, but found none. The calm, collected man before them had already trapped them mentally. Steven took a slow step forward, but it was not aggressive. It was measured, deliberate, and commanding. The bikers instinctively took a half step back, recognizing the quiet power in his stance. Every move he made, every subtle adjustment of his weight, projected precision and skill. One of the bystanders couldn't contain their excitement. "That's Steven Seagal, the master of Aikido. The man has stopped countless attackers without ever raising a hand." Hearing this, the bikers' expressions shifted from confusion to concern. They had come expecting to intimidate an ordinary pedestrian, but now the possibility of facing a martial arts legend was sinking in. Their aggressive gestures became hesitant. The engines revved less loudly. Their laughter sounded forced. Even without fighting, Steven had taken control of the situation. The mental game was won before any physical confrontation could occur. The crowd felt it too, a mix of awe, anticipation, and tension. Everyone was holding their breath, waiting for the next move, knowing that something remarkable was about to unfold. The bikers exchanged uneasy glances, their bravado fading fast. They had underestimated the man they confronted. Every person watching sensed it. The quiet authority of someone who had mastered not only martial arts, but also the power of presence. And just like that, the street had shifted. The bikers were no longer the hunters. They were the ones being measured, analyzed, and mentally trapped by a calm, unshakable presence. The stage was perfectly set for what was coming next. Everyone watching knew. Whatever happened next would be a lesson in restraint, skill, and the subtle power of presence. A moment that would leave the bikers stunned and the crowd utterly captivated. The street was silent now, save for the low hum of the bikers' engines. Their earlier confidence had vanished. Every movement, every gesture from Steven Seagal seemed to command attention without a single aggressive act. The crowd watched in awe, sensing that a pivotal moment was approaching, a turning point that would define the standoff. One of the bikers, attempting to reclaim control, stepped forward with a raised hand. "All right, enough games. We'll see what you can do," he said, his voice less certain than before. There was an edge of nervousness, a hint of doubt creeping in. He had expected fear from the man he confronted, but there was none, only calm authority that made him hesitate. Steven's eyes followed the biker's movements, calm and focused. He didn't raise his voice, didn't threaten, didn't make any sudden motions. Yet every subtle shift of his weight, every controlled breath, projected power. It was a presence that spoke louder than words. The biker, stepping closer, didn't notice how off-balance his posture had already become. A small but deliberate effect from Steven's subtle shifts and quiet control. The crowd leaned forward. Phones recorded every second, capturing this silent tension. Every observer could sense that this was no ordinary confrontation. It was mental, psychological, and physical, a test of skill, control, and awareness. The bikers realized that the street was no longer theirs. The quiet calm of one man had begun to dominate the scene. One biker tried a subtle shove, thinking he could intimidate Steven. The attempt was clumsy. Steven moved barely an inch, but his stance redirected the biker's motion safely aside. No forceful strike, no aggression, just the precise application of skill and timing. The biker stumbled slightly and froze, wide-eyed, realizing he had underestimated his opponent. The remaining bikers exchanged uneasy glances. Their bravado had vanished. The leader of the group muttered under his breath, Who is this guy?" They all knew that this was more than just a casual passerby. There was an unmistakable aura of mastery, a calm that seemed to control the space itself. Steven finally spoke, his voice quiet but firm. "You're making assumptions based on appearances. Confidence doesn't come from intimidation, and strength doesn't come from anger. Control comes from understanding and restraint." His words had an immediate effect. The bikers' confidence wavered further. They realized that they had been lured into a trap, not a physical one, but a mental one. Every move they had made had been measured, observed, and neutralized before it escalated. The calmness and precision of Steven's actions had forced them to second-guess themselves. The crowd felt it too, a collective, all mixed with anticipation. Everyone watching understood that the bikers were trapped in a psychological standoff, unable to proceed with aggression without exposing themselves to risk. Steven had mastered not only the physical space, but also the mental dynamics of the situation. Another biker made a sudden, clumsy lunge, attempting to regain control. In response, Steven shifted slightly, redirecting the motion with perfect timing. The biker lost his balance entirely, catching himself on his bike. No harm was done, but the message was clear. Aggression would not succeed here. The street seemed to hold its breath. The bikers were humbled, caught in a combination of confusion and respect. Steven's calm mastery, his subtle hints of skill, and his unwavering control had turned the situation on its head. What had started as a show of intimidation now felt like a lesson in humility. Even without a full display of martial arts, the psychological effect was undeniable. The bikers' mental defenses had crumbled. They realized that strength was not about aggression. It was about composure, awareness, and precision. The crowd and online viewers could sense the lesson unfolding before them. The stage was set. The bikers had been neutralized without a single overt strike. And everyone watching knew. The next move, whenever it came, would cement Steven Seagal's control completely, a calm, precise, and unforgettable demonstration of skill. The street had grown quiet, almost tense with anticipation. The bikers were no longer laughing or revving their engines. Their earlier bravado had crumbled under the weight of Steven Seagal's calm authority. Every subtle movement, every quiet word, had forced them to pause and reconsider. They were trapped, not by force, but by a presence they had underestimated. Suddenly, one of the bikers made a misstep. He swung an arm carelessly, tried to regain control, and in an instant, Steven shifted. Not aggressively, not violently, but with perfect timing and precision, he redirected the biker's motion without causing harm. The biker stumbled, caught himself, and froze. The realization hit him immediately. This was no ordinary man. The crowd gasped. Phones captured every subtle motion. Everyone watching knew that the quiet, calm man before them was a master, someone who could neutralize threats without ever needing to strike hard. The biker's expressions shifted from confusion to fear, embarrassment, and respect. One biker attempted to circle Steven from the other side, hoping to regain dominance. Steven adjusted his stance, his calm gaze meeting the biker's eyes. In a few subtle steps, he blocked the path, forcing the biker to pause mid-movement. Without raising a hand or voice, he had controlled the situation completely. The bikers were outmatched mentally, physically, and emotionally, and they knew it. Have you ever seen someone take control without fighting? Type yes if you felt the chills. The leader of the bikers, realizing they had underestimated him completely, tried to speak. "Wait, who are you?" he asked, voice shaky. Steven didn't need to answer. The whispers from the crowd spread instantly. "That's Steven Seagal, the martial arts legend. He can stop anyone without throwing a real punch." The bikers' faces drained of color as the realization hit. They had challenged a master, someone whose skill and experience were unmatched. Even though no real fight had occurred yet, the bikers were humbled. Their engines had fallen silent. Their posturing was gone. They had tried to intimidate, but in seconds, the power dynamic had shifted entirely. Every move they had made was countered mentally, every gesture analyzed and neutralized. Then, one of the bikers made a slightly bolder approach. Steven responded with a controlled, precise movement, just a nudge, redirecting the biker's momentum and keeping him safe from any harm. The crowd erupted in awe. Phones captured it, and the energy in the air changed. The bikers understood now that any aggressive act would fail. Their confidence was broken. A bystander finally shouted out, confirming what everyone was thinking. "That's Steven Seagal. He's the real deal. He doesn't need to fight to win." The bikers, faces flushed with embarrassment, stepped back as a group. Their aggression had vanished, replaced by respect and shock. They had underestimated the man they confronted. The tables had completely turned. A quiet, calm, and skilled master had controlled the entire situation without ever needing to throw a harmful blow. The crowd erupted in applause and cheers, recording the moment for posterity. People whispered about his precision, his awareness, and the quiet, commanding presence that had mentally trapped the bikers long before any physical action occurred. Steven took a step back, gave a subtle nod, and started walking away. No gloating, no shouting, just calm mastery. The bikers watched in stunned silence, humbled by the lesson in control, restraint, and respect. The street, which had moments ago belonged to the loudest and most aggressive, now felt like it belonged to the quietest and most skilled. Every person watching, in the crowd or online, felt the impact. They had witnessed something rare, the demonstration of true skill, humility, and mental control. A lesson in respect and the power of calm mastery. The stage was set for the aftermath. The bikers had learned their lesson, and the crowd knew they had just witnessed a moment that would be remembered, a moment where restraint, skill, and quiet confidence triumphed over aggression. The street had returned to a quiet hum, the engines of the motorcycles now idle. The bikers stood together, humbled and still trying to process what had just happened. What had begun as an attempt to intimidate had completely backfired. They had come looking for a confrontation, but instead, they had been met with calm mastery, precision, and unshakable control. Steven Seagal began to walk away, his movements calm and deliberate, each step projecting confidence without aggression. The crowd followed with their eyes, some clapping quietly, some still filming on their phones, knowing they had just witnessed something extraordinary. There was no need for dramatic violence. The display of skill and composure alone had made the point clear. Bystanders whispered among themselves, "Did you see that? He didn't need to fight," and they were already humbled. Another added, "That's real mastery. That's control, awareness, and confidence rolled into one." Even from a distance, viewers watching online could sense the respect the bikers now felt, the shift in energy that had occurred without a single harmful blow. The bikers, once loud and arrogant, now looked embarrassed. Their previous posturing was gone. They had learned a valuable lesson about underestimating someone based on appearances and the real power of calm, measured skill. The street that had felt chaotic only minutes ago now resonated with quiet awe. As Steven reached the edge of the crowd, he glanced back briefly. His eyes carried a subtle reminder. Confidence and control are more powerful than aggression. Strength isn't measured by loudness or bravado, but by composure, awareness, and the ability to handle a situation without escalating it unnecessarily. The crowd cheered softly, some shouting words of admiration, while others quietly discussed what they had witnessed. Phones continued to capture every moment, ready to share with the world. Within hours, videos of the encounter would circulate online, millions of viewers marveling at how a calm, precise, and disciplined individual could neutralize an aggressive situation without resorting to violence. The bikers quietly mounted their bikes and left the scene, humbled but safe. No one was harmed, and the lesson was clear. Respect and awareness triumph over arrogance and aggression. The entire encounter became a living example of restraint, mental strategy, and skill. If you believe calmness and skill are stronger than aggression, type legend in the comments below. For viewers, the story left an inspiring message. Courage isn't always loud, and strength isn't always visible. Sometimes true power is quiet. It is the ability to control your own mind, assess a situation, and respond with precision rather than anger. Steven Seagal had demonstrated that perfectly. This moment would be remembered not for violence or chaos, but for respect, composure, and the subtle art of mastery. The encounter became more than a street confrontation. It became a lesson for anyone watching. True strength lies in self-control, skill, and humility. As the crowd dispersed, people were still talking, still recording, still sharing. They had witnessed a legend in action, and the story would live on online, inspiring countless viewers across the globe. And one final thought lingered in everyone's mind. In a world full of aggression and noise, the calm and the disciplined are the ones who truly command respect. If you believe respect and skill always win over arrogance, type legend in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe for more incredible stories like this.